Hi, I'm Kate Kripke, and welcome to the Motherhood Uncut podcast. This podcast brings the reality of motherhood to the table for real, honest conversations. Here, we laugh, we cry, we learn, we grow, we are awestruck, amazed, humbled, and validated. But most importantly, together we begin to live in a new way that allows us to recognize the immense role that our own health and well-being plays in the health and well-being of our kids. Together, we recognize that everything we do to take care of our physical, psychological, social, and spiritual health is in service of our children. This season, we are diving deep into the role that the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and rules and expectations play in our motherhood journey. Together this season, we will learn to break those boundaries that hold us back from our greatest potential. We're going to hear from moms who have taken this risk, from experts who help in this journey, and from family members who, Lord help me, have important insight to share. So pull up a chair, my friend, make a cup of tea, pour a glass of wine, put on your walking shoes, turn up the volume in your car. Let's do this together because nobody should mother alone. Lucky us, we get Deb Rubin back today. So today, Deb and I are just going to have one of our banter sessions around this crazy time of year, back to school, and what this chaos looks like, what we can do about it, and how to bring a little humor to the table. So as always, do what you need to do. Put on those earbuds, put on those walking shoes, pour yourself something to drink, sit down, take a load off, or take us with you. We're here to mother alongside. Hey, if you're a mom balancing a demanding career or other passions in life with the joys and challenges of raising young kids, I want you to know that I see you. I understand the pressure to be perfect at work and at home and the constant feeling that you might be falling short in both. You're not alone, and there is a way to feel more in control and connected. It's pretty universal, right? When we become moms, we jump into action mode. We focus all of our attention on our kiddos, and we fall farther and farther away from allowing ourselves to tend to what we need to also feel okay. With all the to-dos, any resources spent on ourselves feel unnecessary, wasted, and maybe even selfish. But of course, whether we acknowledge it or not, we all learn very quickly that we simply can't be our best in anything when we're depleted. But here's the thing I also want you to understand today. When moms like you and me are stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, it doesn't just affect us. It can have long-lasting effects on our kids' mental health and development. The pressure you're feeling could be shaping your child's future in ways you never imagined. When we are overwhelmed, it's easy to fall into the trap of perfectionism, trying to meet impossible standards in both our careers and motherhood. But that pressure doesn't just hurt us. It impacts our kids too because we become more anxious. We take more things personally and we have very little tolerance for any discomfort that our children feel. Kids who grow up without a secure attachment are more likely to struggle with anxiety, insecurity, and difficulties forming healthy relationships. They absorb our stress and it can lead to challenges that affect their entire lives. But it doesn't have to be this way. That's why I created the Calm Connection System, a transformative science-based program specifically designed to help turn your guilt, anxiety, and overwhelm into clarity, confidence, and calm. With the Calm Connection System, you can break free of the pressures that hold you back. You can nurture a secure attachment with your kiddo, and you can still thrive in your career or other passions outside of motherhood. I've spent 20 years as a maternal and child mental health specialist, helping more than 6,000 women just like you transform their lives with strategies that are practical, science-backed, and deeply empathetic. As a mom of 2 teenage daughters, I've walked this path myself, balancing the demands of motherhood with a career that I am passionate about. I know what it takes to find that balance, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. But the Calm Connection System isn't just about managing your stress. It's about creating a life where you can pursue your ambitions and be the mom that you want to be. A life where you and your children feel secure, connected, and capable of facing the world with confidence. If you're ready to take the first step towards a more balanced, fulfilling life for you and your family, I invite you to book a free call with me in the next few days. Let's talk about how the Calm Connection system can help you create the life for you and your children that you all deserve while continuing to share your incredible gifts with the world. Book your call now so we can discuss whether or not this program is a fit for you. And regardless, you're going to walk away from our call with new clarity about what's causing your anxiety and things that you can do to access more confidence and calm, both at home and at work. I'm going to make sure that you have a few easy things that will help you right away, whether we work together or not. As a reminder, decades of research has confirmed that untreated anxiety in moms causes anxiety in kids. And the fastest and most effective way to make sure that your kiddo is healthy is to do what you need to do to make sure that you are healthy. You absolutely can excel both outside of motherhood and inside of motherhood, giving your child everything that they need to live a long, healthy, and happy life. This call is where you start, and the link is in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you there. Hey listeners, I want to tell you about the One Clock. The One Clock is a clock that is designed to help you wake up in the way that your nervous system most needs to move through the day with calm and clarity. You know those clocks that wake you up in the morning with that loud beep that jars you out of sleep, with your heart racing? This is not the One Clock. The One Clock is designed with Grammy award-winning musicians that have taken the science behind waking up and turned that into the most amazing music that you have ever woken up to. It's going to help you start your day with ease and clarity. And not only that, but the clock itself, it's like a piece of art. It is beautiful. So if you're looking for something to help you manage your nervous system and start your day that's going to set you up for success, I invite you to check out the One Clock. Information is in the show notes. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Kate.
It's podcast day. Sound familiar?
Happy podcast day.
Deb, you're back.
So nice to see you. Miss you.
Miss you. Well, I miss you. I'm seeing you, but not here on the podcast.
Totally. I miss you on the podcast. I miss us on the podcast.
I miss us on the podcast. And I think that everybody misses us on the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's actually something I keep hearing over and over. I think people are really appreciating this season and what we're bringing to the season, but people love our banter. And of course, your ideas and your wisdom as well. But I think people miss you, having you a part of this.
Wow.
Big time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's what's coming through on the...
Thank you, listeners. And our banter is really fun.
Well, our banter is so fun. And so we have not much planned except to banter about a topic. Although I do want to remind you and our listeners that the whole theme of season 6 is breaking through the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and the expectations and all those things that hold us back from our deepest, fullest potential as humans and mothers that are based on this like inner dialogue that we have with ourselves that creates all kinds of self-criticism and lack of potential and all those things. So we're really breaking through those shoulds here this season.
It's amazing. And the interviews I've heard are so good.
Yeah, thanks.
And you're doing such a good job. And it's hard to pull to like do it all alone. So I just want to like acknowledge that and bow to you because that's not easy. And you're doing it really beautifully.
Thank you. As you know, I do it very makeshiftly. Like I want you to make sure you're talking closer so that people can hear.
I know we don't have
our microphone set up today. So it is. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love this podcast, as you know so well. And I love it even more when you're on it. So
thanks for having me back.
Debbers.
Yes, that's what my dad calls me, Debber.
I don't know if I've ever called you that.
I know, I like it.
I like it. Debbers. Okay, Debbers. So what are we bantering about today?
Okay,
Frickin' school.
We were talking earlier about that school is started and what a perfect time for shit to go sideways.
What a perfect time for shit to go sideways. And so, so let's just I don't even think we've laid it out together yet.
No,
about the back to school fucking shit going sideways land.
I mean, I think it's so interesting because it's like summer's really short, actually. And I think it takes like a whole month or so to like settle into the whatever summer is going to look like, any change. And then, and then when school starts, I think many of us are like, yes, thank God, structure. And then many of us are like, oh, making lunches again, waking people up. Like there's so many different stages of the transition, but no matter what, it looks like it's a change, and change brings up sidewaysness sometimes.
It so does. It's so interesting that I mean, I think many of us feel a little of both, of course, but that like two camps. There are often two camps. So like, thank goodness I have structure. Like, bye-bye,
Mm-hmm.
bye-bye, go to school. Now I
Mm-hmm.
have this space.
Yes.
And then there are the people that are like, oh, school, I want summer. I don't want
I
summer
like
to end.
expansiveness.
Yes, I
Yeah.
like the time and the space to hang out.
Where
Which
what yeah,
I was just like,
what camp are you in?
well, my transition this year has just been a doozy because
Wow.
we came back from Japan. So I came back from Japan. Our girls only had 6 weeks of quote unquote summer vacation. No, I'm sorry, 4 weeks of summer vacation, something like that, because of when school ended and when school began. School ended in Japan and when school started here.
That's very short.
Yeah. I think it was, yeah, somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. And I think I came back from a life that felt spacious and easeful and easy
Mhm.
when I didn't own my house, didn't have a dog to take care of, didn't have a car, had every afternoon off because of the time difference. My kids were independent as all get out because it's so safe there. There was no carpooling.
Yeah, yeah. So different.
I mean, we were in a community, but not really. So we had no obligation, no responsibility to like engage in the community in any way. I
Totally.
mean, there was like no responsibilities. And then I came back to Colorado and I was hit by by life, really.
Yeah.
So I think for me,
Oh,
the
that's a
transition's been a
lot. I
doozy.
know, I mean, I've been watching you go through the transition, but just hearing it all in one like lump sum, I feel that for
Well,
you.
talk about the shoulds. I mean, the girls who are now a senior and a sophomore coasted right in. I mean,
Amazing.
kids are resilient.
Yes.
They just like found their way. I have been like feeling like I'm walking in like two big shoes. You know what I mean? I'm like clumsy and like falling.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is because of the shoulds,
Yeah.
because the way of life in Japan is the culture, the air that I was breathing there, like the culture, the way people go about things, it's all so different. And I think I told myself I wanted to come back and be easeful and only do what's essential and not take on too much. And then within like 3 days, I was spinning around like
Oh,
right? I got sucked right back into all the
well,
shoulds.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And are there any shoulds that you're like letting go of right now with entering the year?
I mean, I think I want to trust my children more.
I
I
love
think when
that.
I was in Japan, there it was really was so safe. So the kind of environment didn't have the same risks. I mean, the easiest one to describe is that no one was driving because
Yeah,
there's public transport. So I didn't have to worry about my teenager driving. But I think
that's
there was
huge.
a way in which I trusted them so much. And then I catch myself being a little more fear-based here.
Yeah,
And that's not helpful for anyone.
totally. Oh, that's so God, I'm like, I live in that. Totally.
So it's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I don't even really notice it. I'm like,
No. Like, what are the fears as you get back to fall, as you come back to quote unquote life? You and Howie did all this great travel. You were out in the wilderness. You were like in your favorite spot, like playing and riding and being in nature.
yeah, I had a very nature summer. It was really good. Well, I guess the first thing when you say what camp am I in? I
Yeah.
think when they were younger, I was 100% in the camp of I need structure again.
Yes.
Like I need everyone to be like in their place. And now I actually I love the summer vibes, like the
Mm.
flow. I love that my kids are more relaxed and like so I think I'm grieving a little bit of like the stress that they're feeling
Mm.
of like going into a world again, healthy, normal stress, necessary to develop resiliency, but just due dates and, you know, school and
Yeah, it's
college,
friends, it's
friends,
college,
all
it's
the
due
things.
dates, it's what classes, it's who's paying for what part of the car.
Totally, totally. So, but on the flip side, I also like to be, when I was working, I took some time off, but then I was back in work and they were not. And that's a hard one to juggle for me because they
Yeah.
expected me to like respond to their texts. And I was like, remember, I'm still at work. Like you're not at school, but I'm at, so that's actually been a bit of a hard thing to be like, I cannot answer my phone until the end of the day.
Wait, can I ask you a
Yeah.
question about that?
Yeah.
So when you were in work mode and your two teenage daughters, so different than folks who have younger kids, obviously, but your two teenage daughter were in summer mode.
Yeah.
So lack of structure. Did it pull at your heart to want to be in summer mode with them? Like, was there any of that like FOMO feeling? Were you like annoyed that you were in structure and they weren't?
Not really,
Okay.
because I did take care of myself and had a break.
Yeah.
So by the time when I got back to my workflow, I was very ready to be working and like
Yeah.
doing what I love to do. So no, in fact, I was just annoyed with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was loving that they were sleeping. Like I actually, when I see them like catching up on sleep, and I know how much their brain needs sleep, I'm so happy. I'm like anything else. And
Totally.
and Sage was working a lot and Tess was not. She was working some, but not enough. But they had enough to keep them accountable. But yeah, so that's kind of the camp that I've been in lately. So I think missing summer flow for them. What fears am I having? I mean, I would say in this very moment, I'm like trusting. I just am trusting of them that to go in their journey. Like I mean, there is a little like nugget of fear around friendships and around their value systems being clear and around making good choices. And those are like always there. But I think the louder voice that I'm working hard to activate is I have given them tools. They are writing their own narratives now. They are painting their portraits. And I have to really step back over and over. I'm there, as I've said before, like the plant in the room, that provides oxygen. But
I like that metaphor.
Thank you. But I am not there like compass
steering
anymore.
everything.
Yeah, I'm not driving as much at all. But then, and here's the funny thing that we can just like riff on for a minute, is then the second they need me, they really need me right in that moment. But then most of the time they don't need me. And that is such a weird, annoying, hard dance.
What do you do? Oh, wait, let me ask you a question first. They think they need you in the moment. Do they really, like from your perspective, do they really need you in the moment? Or is it teenage impulsive, that thing? Like,
yeah, I would say it's not danger.
It's not like
danger need. But for them, it's very real, impulsive need. And it depends on the situation. So I'll give you an example. Did I answer your question on the fear?
Yeah, no, I was just more curious about like I actually woke up this morning and I still feel a little bit of it right now. Like my heart is tense. I feel anxious today, and it's dull. It's not all consuming, but it's like in the background. It's like that dull, annoying noise in the background that sometimes you stop what you're doing and you're like, wait, has that been all, you know what I mean? Has that sound been going on all day? And you're like, it's in the background. I only notice it sometimes. Like, I think I'm feeling that because I suddenly am holding these sort of, like my nervous system is activated.
Did something happen to trigger that? No. Okay.
No.
So it's just
No, it's more
Monday.
just like it's Monday. I have a lot on my mind. I think a lot of it is sort of perceived threat, not real threat.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I mean by like when I was in Japan, all those perceived threats were gone.
That is wild.
It was wild.
And rare for traveling.
It's so rare.
Yeah.
But I think now it's back. And so that's what I mean. Like I like the fear of like, my Kinley came home. She was in San Diego for a soccer tournament. She flew back last night, and then she and a friend drove themselves from the airport back home at midnight. Like, I think part of the reason I'm feeling anxious because I didn't sleep very well last
Well,
night.
that makes sense.
It all makes
Yeah,
sense, but my
totally.
point is, like, I haven't had to worry about that. So it's
Yeah.
that's what I meant. Those background fears, they're just sort of nagging a little bit.
Yeah, actually, I can relate on the sense when my kids were gone this summer for like camp or
Yeah.
whatever and service.
Like,
I couldn't be in touch with them. Like there was real, and I just like for the first time actually ever was able to like cut
yeah,
my emotional cord
yeah,
pretty quickly
yeah,
and just be like, they're in good hands.
yeah.
There's adults around them that are really solid humans. I can relax.
And
And
that nervous system
went
activation goes
away.
away.
Yeah. So that I hear you. Like, and then when they're back, it's like, yeah, your brain, my brain never fully turns off.
Yes, that's what I mean.
I totally get that. Yeah,
So
that's
did
real. That's
you answered your
mothering.
question. Exactly. That's life.
That's just mothering. So when you ask about like the impulsive need, so I had a funny thing happen this weekend
Yeah.
where it was Tess, my younger daughter's birthday weekend. And so Saturday night she went out with friends and she took some people out to dinner, her friends, small group, and they didn't want me around. Like there was no place for me. And luckily for that, I also had a wedding to go to. So I really wasn't available. And so this was actually the first time ever that that Tess had like a birthday party without me there or how it's funny as I'm saying this, I'm noticing like a little shame of like being judged. And I'm like, that's
By the
interesting.
world in this
Yeah,
podcast.
totally. I'm like,
don't
oh
worry,
God.
no one will hear you. We won't tell anyone.
That's so interesting though, because that fear of being judged is like so young and old. And so anyway, I'll say it again. My daughter had a birthday party. I was not available. And that was a first time for her. And she told me 100 times, what are you going to do? Be in the restaurant with us? Like, I don't want you there. Like, we're going to get to the restaurant. We live close to downtown. They had my credit card, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, okay, and when you come home, I'm going to have a whole like dessert bar waiting for you so you guys can have dessert at home and celebrate, whatever. But I was very clear that I won't be there. But she like is a teenager that doesn't fully listen and and must have missed that part of the conversation
about you not being there.
About me not being there when they got home. And I was like, it was only 9:30. I was like deep in my wedding mode. And so
you were dancing on the table.
I was stripping. No, I'm just no, I was just having fun. And I didn't have my phone close by me, but I was checking like every hour. Anyway, there was this half an hour window where Tess was surprised that I wasn't home. And she called me like every minute on the minute for like a half an hour. And when I looked at my phone and saw like a bazillion missed calls, I bugged and I like ran outside and was like, what's wrong? She's like, well, why aren't you here? And my heart like sank and I was like, oh, babe, because I'm at this wedding. It's only 9:30, like probably get me home around 11. And don't you remember we had that conversation? She was like, but, and got very upset. And I had this moment where I was like, I wanted to defend myself. And I also really wanted to listen to her. And it was, those are hard moments of like wanting to empathize, but also be like,
I'm not doing anything
what
wrong.
the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
Luckily, I don't know what happened, but I was just able to listen and I didn't even have to over empathize because that's not really helpful either in these moments. But I was like, oh, you thought I was going to be here. I basically could stick with the facts. Like you thought we miscommunicated, and I was like, you thought I was going to be here and now you're having dessert and is it possible that there's no one there to put a candle in the dessert? And that's what I like realized, like there was not an adult leading the birthday song. And she was just like, yeah. And it just kind of quieted everything. And then I was like, do you want me to come home right now? Like I actually didn't do the like, you're fine, you're resilient, you got this. I in that moment was like, I will come home right this second. She was like, no, I definitely don't need you to come home. And it was just, and that was the end. And then I came home like an hour and a half later and she was good and we talked about it the next day. I was like, wow, it seems like maybe I'd let you down last night a little bit. And I also am a little annoyed that you don't remember me being really clear. Like there was room for both.
Late, but there was room for both later.
Later, because in the moment it was too charged, and I was like charged too. And we had a great conversation about it. It all ended up to be okay, but it was Howie and I actually went. I filled him in. We like were sitting at this little table, and I was like, I've just been parenting for the last like 45 minutes while you've been on the dance floor. And I was like, so here's what happened. And he said something, he's so profound. He was like, this is just what it is right now. They don't need us. They don't want us anywhere close. But then when they need us, it's like they've never needed us more. And it's very emotional. And we just giggled about it and like moved on.
I think there's a really important and amazing point in here, though, which is also about what does it mean to be there for our kids? Because I can understand, like we could totally understand how two other things could have happened that were less nuanced. You know, you were very, you were like surfing that wave. You know, there was nuance to that conversation. I can imagine one parent who would get on the call and feel so badly about needing there that what would happen is they'd be very defensive. What are you talking about? We have, why, of course, you know, like not tended to the feeling at all.
Or the fact.
Or the
like the fact is like, oh, I'm not there right now and you need an adult.
Right. But yes, I mean, that's the nuance. That's the wave
okay.
you would. But we could see that there would be a parent who would just go into, why are you mad at me? We had the conversation. You knew I wasn't going to be there. Then we can see that there might be the parent who's like, feels so badly and so guilty that they just go. Even when the kid says, I don't need you. Almost like now I need to overcompensate for how guilty I feel.
Totally.
So I'm going to go anyway.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Because we think that when our kids need us, we need to be there in person. But she needed you and you were there for her, albeit annoying 45 minutes when you could have been on the dance floor, but still you were there for her just simply by saying, I see you.
Yeah.
What you're going through makes sense given what you heard.
Yeah.
And that was all she really needed.
Wow. Thanks for that.
Isn't that, don't you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like a really beautiful reflection.
Which is why we can be in really solid, caring, healthy relationships with our children and not be there all the time.
Yes. Yes. To your point of shoulds.
Exactly.
The season where we mamas get caught up in, and it actually came up for me when I named the shame, like feeling judged that that's like, should I have been there? Like, what are all these moms going to think of me after I share this choice I made?
But of course, if we sort of loosen the definition of be there, we would say, oh, you were there.
Sure. Totally.
You answered the call.
And the shoulds are often connected to a fear of being judged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or not being enough.
Yeah.
Eesh.
Eesh.
Wait, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How do you feel about your kids' teachers?
Well, I miss parent night. So we bring up another should.
God, I can't believe you were in a parent night.
I was out of town, but Howie didn't go, and I was like, really? But
that's so
it is kind of funny. So I didn't actually meet them, but I think part of that I think Howie didn't go because both girls are okay with all their teachers.
Yeah.
And that there's one, and it's a small town, so I'm not gonna say names, but there's one that we're gonna supplement with a tutor because we already know that the teacher might not speak one of my kids' languages. And so we got that in line, and there's one teacher I'm really excited about. And I think it's like, I don't feel an attachment to every teacher being perfect.
Well, I think this is why I asked.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I think this time of year, almost especially when our kids are younger, you know, like kindergarten, first, second, third, like who's your kid's fourth grade teacher? Do you remember that?
Well, then I felt way more attached.
Well, exactly.
Way.
And it, you know, and I think it's just a funny time of year when we're sort of anticipating what the year is going to be like for our kids based on first impressions.
Totally.
And it's tricky to be disappointed in who your kids have as teachers, or who is in their classes or isn't in their classes, or what's it going to be like from, and now we're in high school, so it's more like, what's going to be like for you if quote unquote none of your friends are at lunch with you,
Totally.
right?
That's
The,
real.
the dilemmas or the challenges change as our kids get older, but this is that time of year when we project forward all of our hopes, fears, and expectations for our children.
Absolutely. God, just bringing that up and remembering, like, in elementary school specifically, I felt, I mean, I feel like the teacher's role is so important.
Yeah.
And and I felt very attached to my kids having other adults whom they could rest and trust and learn from. And I bow to the teachers. I mean, I just think the teacher's role is so essential. So not so much was it a good teacher, bad teacher, but was it a good fit for my kid's personality, was
Uh-huh.
kind of more where,
Uh-huh.
and both my kids have really different personalities, and like one didn't fit with everyone, and like I remember just feeling so nervous about that. So yeah, that's all I have to
But
say.
and that's
High school is
how did
different.
you, so did you ever have the beginning of a year where whether it's middle school and high school or younger in elementary school, where one of your daughters had a teacher that you were really nervous about them having? It was like a disappointment that they had that teacher, where it turned out okay.
Yes.
Can you tell that story
Yeah.
in summary?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I got pretty lucky in elementary school with great teachers.
Yeah.
There was one year that there was a teacher that was learning. And
Yes.
I remember it turned out okay because I just realized I had to advocate a little more. And by advocating meant just like kind of sharing things about my kid to the teacher that
Uh-huh.
the teacher might not pick up on because my kid knew how to like hide those parts of her.
Yeah.
And so it was never confrontational. It was always like, hey, I want to just give you some insight of what's going on at home, just so you have the whole picture.
Yeah.
And it did turn out okay because at least in this experience, the teacher wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I remember I always have this thing of like, I don't want to be the squeaky wheel and no, 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 no. But then also as a parent, I felt like it was my job to, if I thought there was a myth happening,
Mm-hmm.
that is my job
To advocate,
to advocate.
to have a hard conversation.
Totally.
Yes.
And when a kiddo feels like someone's got their back, preferably their primary caretaker,
Yes.
that is what I believe gives them a lot of resilience in
Yes.
themselves.
Yes.
And having their back does not mean being in the emotional swimming pool with them, right? It doesn't mean I was freaking out like, oh my God, Tessa's not being seen and la 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 la.
Or oh my gosh, we have to get you in a different teacher we
Totally.
have to change your teacher.
Totally. Or we have to like run away. There's
Yeah.
times where you do, maybe, and times where leaving
Yeah.
a school is appropriate. But I would say most of the time, it's like, okay, how do we advocate really and trust in our kids' potential and the teacher's potential?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, there's no doubt that a school year is easier when our kids are in a teacher that's a good fit for our kids.
Definitely.
Like our life is easier when that happens because they're
Mhm.
having their needs met. We don't have to have as many hard conversations. The teacher might just get, like, that is an easier school year.
Absolutely.
And if our kids always had everything easy, they would never build resilience.
And either would we.
And neither would we. And
Because
so
we're learning new skills every day in motherhood, right?
and we're modeling. So I guess it's just always, it's sort of funny. We weren't planning on bringing this up in this conversation, but I think this time of year is often that time of year where we are uncomfortable on our children's behalf. Oftentimes we're uncomfortable even before they are.
Totally.
Because we're like, oh, I've quote unquote heard X, Y, or Z about that teacher. And like, our kids don't know those things,
No,
right?
yeah, we have a whole story.
We have a whole story, or they're really uncomfortable. And we just jump, to your point, we jump in that swimming pool with them. And it's just such a great time for us to like slow down. Like one of Bridger's classes has like 37 kids are in it or something.
What class?
I don't even remember one of her core classes at Boulder High.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of kids. And there were 47 kids in the entire high school at their school in Tokyo.
Wow.
And I caught myself being angry, disappointed, FOMO for Tokyo, worried about my kid, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, and then of course, if I can like catch it and slow down, I can also see the side of like, how might this experience actually be really powerful?
Amazing.
Like, what's it like to have to learn to share your voice in a class where there's 37 kids or 38 kids, whatever it is? Because it's easy to fall behind. It's easy to be quiet.
Yeah.
And then it's an opportunity to sort of get out there and to ask for extra help and to, whatever. But
you're taking an annoying scenario and looking at it as an
which is like, quite frankly, if I don't do that, I'm going to be pissed all year. And I don't feel like being pissed all year.
Exactly. I've been caught up in that with FOMO of curriculums of different schools.
Yes.
And being like, oh, I wish. And then I'm like, what? That is not helping anyone. And it's not helping me. And it's especially not helping the energy I have around the school.
Or our kids, because then,
I know. And it seems so like easier said than done, because it is easier said than done. But I think to your point and your whole like mission in life is like, how do you really adjust what you're going to focus on and how you believe and the thoughts you tell yourself to not be bumping all the time. Otherwise you're stuck.
Quite frankly, simply to feel better. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like I could feel anxious and disappointed and angry all year.
Sure.
If I focused all my attention on how crazy I think it is that there's 37 or 38 kids in one class with one teacher. Right? Totally. I mean, I'm not going to feel very good.
No, you could get stuck there.
And by the way, there's probably not a lot I can do about it. Right? Nothing. Which is the other thing. So it's like, where do I want to put my agency? Well, I'd rather feel better. I'd rather feel hopeful and grounded and calm. So I'm just going to like shift my perspective.
And how does Bridger feel about it?
She said something really interesting. She said the only 2 times I talked to my teacher today was when I said hello, when I walked in, and when I said thank you, when I left. And again, I may not have had this comparative experience had we not been in Tokyo, where there's small enough classes that they're conversing about what they're learning, like the
critical thinking.
Yeah, like the whole class is about a conversation about the learning. It's not teaching, taking notes, right?
Right.
And she's bummed.
Yeah.
She's bummed. And whatever, what are you going to do? I mean, she's kind of like, yeah, it's really annoying.
Right.
What's for dinner?
Yeah. Right. So she's not dealing on it either. I mean, it makes me, do you think she would be receptive to you like encouraging small group discussion or something?
I mean, I'm gonna give the teachers at Boulder High the benefit of the doubt that in a big class like that, they're going to have the kids in smaller groups for discussion. And we've been at school long enough to know that that's usually what happens in a big class.
Totally. I love that. That's another huge thing, giving the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
To feel better.
Totally.
It's just like it loosens everything up.
Totally. I think I also the answer is no, I'm not sure I would encourage her to do that. I think if she came home and was complaining about feeling behind or not having enough attention, then I might have that conversation. But honestly, I don't, whatever. Like there's too many other things in my brain.
Exactly. And I think to your point, and you know this, that advice isn't usually received unless asked.
Yeah, totally.
Especially from adolescents. Like too much advice giving is like they probably aren't going to really receive it anyway.
So given that beautiful statement, as we wrap up, although we could always stay here and talk forever, I'm curious, as we look ahead at the school year, if you take on the lens of paying attention to and then challenging the shoulds or the shouldn'ts that get in our way of feeling good in motherhood. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
What advice, as if people are asking, let's pretend they are.
Okay.
What advice do you have for our listeners about the start of school, about this season when kids are heading off into this next school year and there's all this uncertainty and all this unpredictability? How do we mother, let's say the older age kids at this point, that sort of like preteen, teen, school age child? What advice do you have for us?
I'm trying to think general. Like the general pop.
Well, yeah.
So
I mean, I have more direct questions if you need them. I'm just curious to know what comes up first.
yeah, I mean, so you're asking how, how can I speak to what advice can I give mothers to support their kids during uncertainty right now?
Sure, that's a fine way to interpret my question.
Okay.
Or themselves.
So it's going to be things we've said a million times.
That's okay. We have new listeners every year.
One is, I mean, when we feel the anxiety in ourselves, we have to really check it, and get curious with it of like, is there actually something to be worried about? Is this worry something that I can befriend or that I can put down, and put down? Is there a problem that needs to be solved? And if you start kind of going through those questions, like, is there a problem that needs to be solved right now? That's very clear. Like, oh, I have to call the guidance counselor, or is there a problem that is maybe needs to be solved in 3 years, like big picture things, like I can put that in a different bucket and not and change the channel in my brain. So really starting to have conversations with ourselves around what is my anxiety trying to tell me right now. So, and that starts with ourselves always. I would say during any transitional time, we like up our game of resourcing ourselves. And so, whether it's an easy transition or not, it's still transition. So remembering to get outside, remembering to drink lots of water, remembering to find a friend to vent to, journaling, shaking, all the things we know that like help keep us present, right? And then when it comes to how we work with our kids, it's like, well, all of those behaviors are going to continuously make you the adult that is safe for them to land. And so that I think is the ultimate goal. Like, how can I be the adult in the room that they can let it all hang out with and be messy and cry and complain and talk shit about people and do the things that adolescents do, because that's part of their process. But if we can create a container where that's welcomed, maybe with a time limit, but that's
healthy, safe boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then they are going to have a place to come home and get resourced. And then the last piece I'll just say is naming it to our kiddos. Like, starting new school years is uncertain. Friend groups change. You don't know the relationships you're going to have with your teachers. Getting on the bus is scary. Like, that's all really, really normal. So just naming it, as trusting your instincts that they might need it named often. Some might just need it named like on Monday mornings, but a little just one liner of like, hey, this is normal and you got this.
I think that last part, which is like, we can so unintentionally teach our children that their feelings are wrong. Because when our kids come home and they don't like their teacher, or they feel anxious because their friends aren't at lunch with them, or it's so easy to be like, oh, don't even worry about that. You'll meet new friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like it's so uncomfortable to sit with our kids' discomfort and to be able to like, of course, you were really hoping you would have friends in your lunch period. Of course you're bummed.
Totally.
I'm reminded in hearing you talk about this, about something I learned so beautifully from you way back when our girls were little, about how much more important it is to be connected with our kids, to be, how much more important it is to be connected than it is to be right.
It's one of my favorite lines.
Right. Yeah. I think you say it more beautifully than that, but just this whole thing about how when we get in these power struggles, which are often around our kids acting or behaving or sometimes feeling ways that we wish they weren't acting or behaving or feeling.
Yes.
And that we can get so focused on just the thing that's happening that we want to change, that we forget that in that moment is the moment to build connection.
Yes.
And this is a time when there's so many transitions, to your point, they're bumpy. There's so much awkwardness.
So awkward. Yes.
Yeah.
And they're regardless of the age, they're not perfect.
And neither are we.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're going to say the wrong thing, and they're going to do something out of alignment of their truth, and they're going to lie, and they're going to gossip, and they're just going to do things that are not awesome at times. And like, that's when we have to like let it land, validate, and then there's room to be like, hey, can I give you a little adult perspective, or do you want my opinion on this, or do you want to problem solve this, or do you want to workshop this? One of my favorites. And giving them the choice. And I would imagine a lot of times when there's like an initial connection moment, then there's room to have our influence. And that's actually the other piece, is we want to be the ones that influence them. That is like really important, but we cannot do that without connection first.
You know what I watched with Bridger last night?
Tell me.
Inside Out 2.
Oh, I saw it with my girls too.
I mean, listeners, if you haven't watched Inside Out 2 yet, go watch Inside Out 2. It is so brilliant.
So good.
And of course, it's all about this transition.
Yeah.
She just turned 13. She's going into high school. I mean, it's all the stuff that I think, our listeners who have those pre-adolescent and adolescent kids can relate to. So that's a good
good. Take some homework for the weekend.
So good. And watch it with your kids. I watched it with Bridger, and I thought it was just a great movie for us to watch together.
I actually took my kids to the movie to the
on the big
to
screen.
watch it
Nice.
at the beginning of the summer, and I thought we'd have this like amazing conversation afterwards, and we went out to dinner, and they were like, "That was fun."
Well, that's sort of what Bridget was like. But also, no conversation needed after that movie. Like,
which
speaks
was a
for
reminder
itself.
to me.
Yeah.
It was a good yep, that was enough.
That was enough. I was about to call you Darwin, which is not your name. That would be my dog's name. Deb.
That was so
Back
fun.
anytime.
I love
Back
it.
anytime.
Thank you.
We miss the banter. I get tired of hearing myself talk sometimes. So,
well, I love the banter, so I will come back.
Tell our people where they can find you. What are you doing right now?
I got some cool things to share. Things. So I'm taking new clients for parent support, which I'm really trying to like workshop the name. So if anyone wants to chime in, I love it.
Let's crowdsource.
Yeah, let's I'd love to hear your wisdom. It's like it's about exactly what you're just saying, how to increase parent-child connection.
Great. So if anyone has any language that you think would be catchy, good language to describe that, 1-2 words, something like that, pop it into the comments over on our Instagram feed.
Thank you.
Motherhood Uncut
I would
podcast.
really appreciate that. So I'm taking new clients for that, for individual work. And then I have 4 workshops that are happening, 2 of which only have 1 spot left. So one is a 1-day workshop for mothers and daughters together of 5th and 6th graders that has 1 spot left. And it's September 29th. It's a Sunday. And I'm very excited to share that my older daughter is going to be my assistant.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and I'm like training her right now around.
That's freaking awesome.
Space. It is awesome.
Are you paying her?
Yeah, I'm totally gonna pay her, and she wanted to do it.
You're gonna go on tour.
That's what I was like. Let's go on tour together.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
So that's
maybe
really
you and Sage would come back to the podcast to talk about that
afterwards. That sounds great.
If she wants to.
I'm sure she will. It's a half-day workshop.
That's flipping awesome.
Thanks.
I'm learning this for the first time.
I know, I'm so excited. So that's happening, where I have a mother-daughter workshop together in October that is for moms of 7th and 8th graders, and I need people to sign up for that. There's a lot of room, and I haven't marketed it very well. So that's an all-day workshop.
That's October.
I can't remember the exact date, but it's all on my website. And it's longer, it's a little more intense, but it's really about building connection, learning new ways to update your relationship, understanding your strengths and your challenges. There's no public sharing. You learn a technique, then you go in the corner and you work it out with your mom.
This is live.
Yeah, it's in person. Yeah. It's in a beautiful space, and it's just a really sweet way to connect with your kids.
In and around Boulder for that one.
Yeah. And it's a Sunday, so you could fly in and have a weekend in Boulder.
Boulder in the fall is gorgeous.
Totally. Then I have a Mom Magic that's for moms of 9 to 11-year-olds, and that's a 4-week course that is, I have one spot left for that too. That meets once a week in person.
Okay.
And then my last one is a virtual class for moms of middle schoolers, just the moms. And that is a 5-week course. And that there's plenty of room for sign up for that too. So that's where there's lots of wiggle room there. And I'd love to have you, and you just learn all the ins and outs of mothering adolescents and learning about your internal systemic sexism and the things that get in the way of mother-daughter connection and how we can do it differently.
Ah, I love it.
Thanks so much. So yeah, I'm really excited for this fall.
It's not funny. I feel like are we still recording? Well, we are.
Okay.
That was weird. Count on technology.
We just had a weird thing happen on the computer that you listeners know.
All right, Deb, I love you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love you so much.
Love you so much. Come back soon.
I will. Bye, listeners.
Bye. Hey, listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love to request that you share it with one mom out there who you know might benefit. You know, there are a lot of women who feel like they're mothering alone, and it takes all of our help to make sure that everyone feels like they have what they need to both feel successful and also feel supported. So please take a moment and just share it with one person. And if you feel inclined, go ahead and rate and review this podcast, because the reality is that the more reviews we have and the higher ratings we have, the more this podcast is shared with other moms out there, which makes it more easy for them to find us. So thanks again for your help with this. And I'm assuming you do find this podcast helpful because you're still here at the end listening to this memo. So thanks for being here, and share away. Sending love.